It was over 10 years ago that on his first state visit to India, US President Obama declared in front of the Indian Parliament that he looked forward to the day India would become a permanent member of a reformed United Nations Security Council.
That is why I can say today, in the years ahead, I look forward to a reformed United Nations Security Council that includes India as a permanent member.
The lack of progress toward a permanent seat may be causing frustration for the government of India, but the irony is that they have only themselves to blame, because numerous reports have said that during the onset stage of the UNSC, India was offered a permanent seat not once but twice. And the most interesting part is that the offers had came from the two greatest rivals of all time, the United States and the Soviet Union. Back in 1950, the United States quietly offered a permanent seat to India, possibly replacing China on the Security Council. But Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru demurred. Instead, he suggested that the seat should be given to the People's Republic of China. And once again, a similar proposal came from the Soviet Union in 1955, and Pandit Nehru rejected it again, emphasizing his support for Communist China's entry into the UNSC. Nehru believed that China is a great ally of India, and it deserved a permanent seat in the UNSC as an emerging power in Asia. An irony is that China thanked him by attacking India in 1962. Beside the international stage, the seat offering has remained as a hot topic in India's domestic politics as well. In almost every debate with rival parties, the Indian Congress Party has to face the question that why Nehru declined the offers of permanent UNSC seat. And every time they have refused to accept it, and even Pandit Nehru did that so. On September 27, 1955, Dr. J.N. Parekh, member of the parliament, raised the question in the Lok Sabha that whether or not India had refused a seat informally offered to her in the UNSC, and Prime Minister Nehru denied that no such offer was made to India. However, just a month earlier, on 2nd August 1955, Nehru in his letter to the chief ministers clearly mentions that there was indeed an informal offer from the United States for a UNSC seat, and Nehru denied it because he didn't want to take the seat. Even he stated it would be unfair to a great country like China not to be in the UNSC. He also stated that India is not anxious to enter the Security Council. So it's crystal clear that Pandit Nehru didn't want India to be seated in the world body at the expense of China. More or less, the theory that stands for the possibility of existence of the proposals for India's permanent UNSC seat that came from the United States and Russia cannot be denied. But it was not that simple as it seems. It was self-interest that led the approach of the United States and Russia towards India. It wouldn't be wrong to say that those offers were made in exchange of India's geopolitical independence. They both wanted India on their own side to enlarge their own dominance in the group. 3 out of 5 members were democracy and the other 2 were communist one-party states. So there was a clear gap of ideology between them. So the United States and the Soviet Union both wanted to strengthen their own side, and that mindset led their approach towards India. If we tally the parameters, India clearly deserves the permanent seat in the UNSC. Because it contains 18% of the world's population, it is one of the fastest growing economies in the world. Most importantly, India has been the member of the UN since its foundation. The strategic and demographic position of India is also crucial. Its location in the Indian Ocean and the uprising of its position in the international arena make it the central power of the Indo-Pacific economic framework. And most importantly, India has made extraordinary contributions to the US peacekeeping operations by providing army members and not just financial help like the US. Since the onset of such missions in 1948, India has substantially contributed almost 200,000 troops to the UN peacekeeping force in more than 49 missions. That is the largest participation by any country. At the outset, this country has one of the world's largest and most successful pharma industries. It was India that helped over 150 nations by sending vaccines and medical equipment during the COVID pandemic. Indian pharmacists produce drugs on a mass scale and make them available at affordable prices, especially to the developing world. And still, despite all these reasons, India is not a permanent member of the UNSC.
संयुक्त राष्ट्र का भारत में जो सम्मान है, भारत के 130 करोड़ से ज्यादा लोगों का इस वैश्विक संस्था पर जो अटूट विश्वास है, वो आपको बहुत कम देशों में मिलेगा। लेकिन ये भी उतनी ही बड़ी सच्चाई है कि भारत के लोग संयुक्त राष्ट्र के रिफॉर्म को लेकर जो प्रोसेस चल रहा है, उसके पूरा होने का बहुत लंबे समय से इंतजार कर रहे हैं। आज भारत के लोग चिंतित हैं कि क्या ये प्रोसेस कभी एक लॉजिकल एंड तक पहुंच पाएगा? आखिर कब तक भारत को संयुक्त राष्ट्र के डिसीजन मेकिंग स्ट्रक्चर से अलग रखा जाएगा?
And there is also China, that is the biggest stumbling block in India's quest for a permanent seat in the UNSC. The fact of the matter is that China is not comfortable with India gaining prominence in the global order. Because like all of its neighbors, China claims Indian sovereign lands as well. And for sure reasons, China is not in mood to accept the power gaining of its rival. For years, the autocratic nation has been prepping a rancorous Pakistan as a viable proxy. India is aware of China's ploy and has responded with a foreign policy stance of strategic autonomy. In recent years, India has been positioning itself as an alternative to China for multinational manufacturers and has successfully enmeshed itself into strategic game plans for the Asia-Pacific region. New Delhi's diplomatic success at the Delhi G20 summit in winning support from the fellow member countries for the African Union to join the global body and in pulling together a consensus of joint leaders' declaration in the scenario of Russia-Ukraine conflict clearly shows that India is rising step by step, internally and externally. If the UN and the UNSC do not reform now, it will lose its importance. It would be called a failed organization like the League of Nations. The global community needs to realize that unless the UN is restructured and democratized, freed from the shackles of the past and adapts to the realities of the present multilateral geopolitics, peace and prosperity will just be a far cry. India needs to be given what is due for 75 years. If the UN wants to maintain its relevance in the 21st century, then it needs to be more inclusive and open, and only then it will reflect its name, getting the nations united.